And we're live. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, Shifties. Welcome back to Shift the Journey. I'm your host, Tito Amogus. Today's special guest is calling in from the other side of the world. So, when you have different time zones, there might be some timing issues. But hey, I wanted to, how about I just refresh your memory? What are we doing here? This is my passion project. I love connecting people and storytelling. So let's connect people via people's career journeys. And so I myself am a career shifter. I am 10 years into my second career. My first career was 20 years in the US Air Force. And while I was in, I had a whole bunch of different jobs from working on like doing munitions maintenance and then aircraft maintenance and data analysis. And my last job was actually data analysis. And when I was getting out, or actually probably a couple years before I was getting out, I thought, you know what? I really want to do this when I become a civilian. So I researched different ways to do it, contacted a few people, didn't have a whole lot of guidance. But thankfully, I feel like God led me to the right opportunities at the right times. And here I am about 10 years later, because at the end of this month, yes, July 31st, was the day that I moved to Nashville after I retired from the Air Force. And so, it took me a while. It took me a few months to get my first job. But once I did, lots of things changed. Lots of things changed. So I feel like, one of the things that really holds people back when they're thinking about changing a career is, well, one of them is like, I think top of the list is like, oh, how much am I going to lose if I start in another career? Am I going to take a pay cut? That's definitely something to think about. Am I going to start at the bottom? But starting at the bottom is not appealing to a lot of people. But if you're wanting to build a new career and you're okay with like starting, at the bottom, and like you have one of those sponge brains and you just want to learn, 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 starting a new career is the way to go. I feel like it was really it was really tough sometimes, but man, I learned so much. And I find myself now in a place of lots of opportunity where I'm able to use the experience that I've gained over the last 10 years to help people in their business. And so um, it's interesting because I I brought up this, or this whole this whole thing came out of some experiences that I had when I was working for a former employer, and I was with them, and they were making they had like shows, on LinkedIn. It was the first time I ever saw anything LinkedIn live. I've been part of webinars. Well, I'd signed up for webinars and like listen to people and watch people share their screen and all that. But I had never been on a live show. And it scared me to death because I'm like, man, if I say something stupid, that's on the internet forever. Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Uh-oh. We're having an issue. Give me 1 second. Um, oh, see, I got my times. Man, I'm terrible at time zone math. Your email. I sent him an email. Um, yeah, I'm terrible with time zone math. I've done this so many times where I've scheduled something and it was at the wrong time for the other person. Um, yeah, I told him, uh, hang on, I'm live now. I told him it would be 8 o'clock his time. Turns out it's 7 o'clock his time, which is like, whoops. Yeah, that's my fault. But oh, where was I? Uh oh, So yeah, there were times where yeah, I had the opportunity to go on some shows, some LinkedIn live shows, and I was like, man, this is a lot of fun. I want to do something like that, but I don't even know where to start. I started talking to people and started reading up on it. And I was like reading a book about like hosting your own show. And basically it said just do it. And I was like, okay, but like what kind of planning and stuff. So anyway, I did it. I asked people what they wanted me to talk about, and like 83% of the responders said Filipino food. So hey, we can talk about Filipino food too, but um, we're here to talk about really life. So yeah, my one of my biggest inspirations in my life was my dad. And my dad, um, he he had so many different jobs. It's so interesting. He worked as a like as a med tech. He also worked for an electronics firm. He designed an adding machine for a company that was bought out by Smith Corona. So I tell people all the time, yeah, my dad made adding machines, or he designed an adding machine. People are like, what's an adding machine? Predecessor to the calculator, I guess. And then now everybody has a calculator on their phone. It's like, hey, And so um, one thing I learned from him is whatever you choose to do, do it well. Do it well, become like he said, become indispensable. I would see both sides of becoming indispensable, where it's like, yay, I have all this opportunity to work. Cause hey, let's be honest, we love to pay our bills, right? I don't love to pay my bills, but I love the fact that I am able to pay my bills. And then the other thing is like, you know, the other side is of it is like, yeah, becoming indispensable, then like people really need you, people really want you around. And then it just opens up more opportunity. All right. Hey, he's coming in. Uh Hang on. He's having issues with his devices. Yeah, it says probably causing undue stress because I was off by an hour. We are an hour earlier than I told him. And like I said, man, I'm terrible at that. Um, but yeah, my dad was one of the biggest influences on my life. He gave me a lot of things that are great. Um, like, okay, I'm still chatting with my cousin offline here, but he gave me a sense of humor. His sense of humor. My hairline came from my dad. Thanks, Dad. The ability to grow facial hair, which is like not super common for Filipinos. Thanks, Dad. And the ability to learn and learn and grow, and just I think the desire to try new things, do new things, and all that. So, um, yeah, I'm not like really stalling, but I am stalling because we're trying to get on. We're trying to get him on. He's having some issues, some technical difficulties. But anybody out there, I like to tell people, hey, this is a live show. I mean, we're having a conversation. You guys are privy to it. I'd love it if you have any questions, put some questions in the chat. Whatever medium you're on right now. If you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn, whatever it is, shoot a message and say, hey, we'll talk about it. One of the things about this, I use StreamYard for streaming, and one of the things I could do is put the comments on the screen, and we can talk. Oh, look who's here!
Can you hear me?
Yes. All right,
Jeez.
man.
Sorry, man.
No, I'm sorry. I'm my bad because like I told you it was gonna be 8 o'clock your time, right? But it turned
Yeah.
7 o'clock. I was like, why is he like taking his time, man? I was like, we got
Yeah, I was like, hey, I'm gonna use the bathroom, man. I'm gonna make some coffee, get ready for this, And
yeah,
I was like, I got the computer, I got the phone, I'm gonna set up this whole thing. And I'm like, wait, right now? Oh shoot, man.
yeah.
I tried to do it from the
Yeah,
phone right away, but the browser was blocking it. So I just
yeah,
pulled up the computer right now. So
yeah.
hopefully this is
Cool.
okay.
All right, yeah, I think it's good, man. I think it's good. So, all right, everybody, here's my special guest, very special guest. He is my first cousin. Our
First
we have parents who are siblings. If you look at us, you go, you guys aren't related. Just wait. Mannerisms. You know what? I noticed like when we went to California in October, I was talking to Angela and I was like, I never thought that John Jay and I had anything in common as far as like anything, but I feel like our mannerisms and like some of the things we say, it's like, it's so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, I think you get around family like just when we were, over in Tennessee, and you just,
Yeah.
these common things that, you know, we pick up from our parents
Yeah.
or whoever, and then like, oh yeah, hey, they do that too,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right. So here's the introduction. This guy is he's leading up a community focused nonprofit organization in the Philippines. He's also an entrepreneur. He said he's going to go make coffee, and so maybe you could talk
Yeah.
about Fundacion, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This dude loves martial arts. You also worked for my mom as a med tech.
Yeah, that in
Yeah,
college, I was a
yeah.
lab assistant over
Oh yeah,
there.
lab
Yeah, yeah, for
assistant.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
No.
all right. So we've already established that we're related. People who know me. I'm from California, but
Mhm.
exactly where in California are you from?
So, I grew up for the most part, in Glendale, California. So it's Southern California, Los Angeles area. Um, you know, went to school there, went to church there, throughout my younger years. And then in high school, I spent a little bit of time I don't know if you call it, it's not Central Coast or whatever, in like Santa Cruz area for 4 years of high school. And from after that, ended up going to even Michigan for a year.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, yeah, and which was interesting going to the Midwest from the West Coast. I didn't know geography that well. I thought I was going closer to the East Coast. It's like but then ultimately ended back up in my 20s in California, doing college in Southern California, um, and that's when I worked for your mom,
Yeah,
Auntie Norma. At that time, she was head of several departments at a hospital in downtown Los Angeles, Chinatown, actually. And I was a pre-med student. Um, I changed my major a lot of times. Talk about shifting.
yeah.
I started out as a pre-med, med tech, then ended up in health science. Then at that time, your mom hired me over there, and you know, I'd like to tell people that I was a professional basketball analyst on the weekends. Instead of working, or after I would get done working, I would just go to the lobby of the hospital and watch like NBA on NBC for like 3 games in a row, and hey, just call me when you need something. I'll be here. But unfortunately, everybody there was afraid to bother me because I was they figured out at some point there was nepotism going on, and
Oh, a
your
little
mom
bit
was
of unethical behavior.
well, the funny thing was is like, I would work on the weekends because it was of college, and your mom doesn't work on the weekends. Your
Yeah.
mom wouldn't allow any of that stuff, but
Right.
so,
Yeah.
that shout out to Auntie Norma. She really um gave me an experience of working at a job where like, hey, this is just an extra income for me, summer job to vacations. But yet I was working with people who they were trying, that was their how they made their living,
Yeah.
and I like to tell this story, like, I'm here spending my money on Air Jordans, and we're making the same money. And these guys are trying to put kids through school and feed
Yeah.
people. They're going to job number 2, doing the same thing.
Right.
They may be lab assistants like me, but maybe in the Philippines or Burma, they were like doctors or med techs or things like that. And
Yeah.
some were able to pass their boards, some were not, and just ended up grinding.
Yeah.
And I look back on that and I think, man, you talk about privilege.
Yeah.
I was able to do those kind of things and in that environment, I still think about that a lot today.
Yeah.
But ultimately I didn't end up uh um in the medical field, and yeah, but ended up doing a bunch of the other stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
So what was the next thing that you did? Like what drew you away
mm,
from, healthcare?
ooh, so this is great. I was in college, and a couple of my buddies from high school that I went to high school with in Monterey Bay. Um, we were always kind of like entrepreneurial. I think my first entrepreneurial thing was selling hot dogs in the dorm in high school. It was great. I made a lot of money, but some of my buddies who I did that with, they came to me and they got this big idea. They were like, "Hey, um, I, there's this heat transfer machine. It's like a new thing. It's like an iron-on thing where you put designs on shirts, but it's a big press. Obviously,
Yeah.
these heat transfer machines are all around now and whatever. But at that time, it was kind of becoming affordable, and it was like $1,200, right? And my buddy we were all college students. He's like, if the four of us put $300 together, we can buy this thing. We'll learn how to print, and we can start like doing uniforms for like sports teams. We can do like
Mm.
t-shirts and this and that. And I was like, man, that sounds like that's cool. And I always, I always was into kind of like printing, things like that.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing this, and it was like the first time that something was really exciting to me.
Mm.
My buddy was a business major, and so he would do all these financial statements and different things, and I was like,
Oh,
"Man,
yeah.
this is really cool." And so I was like, "Well, hey, man, I really like this, but I don't know anything about it. Maybe I should transfer to business, you know?"
Mhm.
But at that time, I was at a private school, and it was super expensive.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "It doesn't really make sense to transfer, start all over, and stay here."
Yeah.
So, my wife laughs at this story because she was like, "How did you get to?" I decided to move to a public school. And so I came up with Cal State Fullerton, and she was like, "How did you decide on Cal State Fullerton?" And I was like, "Man, I was dancing with this girl at a party one time, and I was asking her where she goes to school. Like, she was really cute, and she was like, 'I'm a business major at Cal State Fullerton.'" And so, I mean, I wasn't looking for her, but I was like, "Hey, who knows?" So, back then they didn't have like we didn't have internet was just starting. Like I
Yeah.
think I got email, and like it wasn't even a browser. It was like a weird like the Matrix, like the Matrix and stuff.
Yeah.
So there was no MapQuest. Who could remember? You remember MapQuest?
Oh, yeah.
So I just asked my dad, I was like, how do you get to Cal State Fullerton? And so he was like, "Oh, I'll take the 91, blah, blah, blah." So I head out to Cal State Fullerton and just roll in, one day to like the registrar. They're like, "Oh, you can meet with a counselor." And I had brought I had a buddy of mine who was working in the registrar's office at my college, and he gave me my transcripts. I didn't pay for it. He gave
Oh,
it to me, right? So I had a lot of connections and stuff.
yeah. It's
But
called
anyway, so
networking.
yeah. So that serves me now, But so I gave them my transcripts, and they're like, this religion won't transfer these things, and they're like, you can enter Cal State Fullerton now, but our suggestion is you can go up the freeway to Mount San Antonio, and take
Mhm.
all these same classes for $13 a unit.
Oh
And I
yeah.
was like, cool.
Yeah.
Then you take a semester, then reapply, and it'll be all good. So that's how I got into
Okay.
changing. And then while I was studying, another friend of mine, her boyfriend was in the snow working in snowboard manufacturing, and him
Mhm.
and a couple of his friends wanted to start their own manufacturing company, like a small shop.
Yeah.
And they didn't know anything about business. And one time I was just talking to them at like a wedding, and he was like super passionate about
Yeah.
this idea. And I was like, well, did you guys get your business license? Do you guys have like a fictitious business name, a DBA? What are you gonna do for like phone lines and stuff? And he's like, damn, we never thought of none of that stuff. And I was like, hey, I can't make snowboards, but if you're looking like, I'm digging like the passion you guys are coming with, and I would love another project for me to explore more business.
Yeah.
And so that, the clothes did okay actually, but like, we fooling around and this and that, and then ended up learning a lot and losing a lot of money. I mean, trying to make snowboards
Yeah.
in my early 20s and stuff. So that's from that was going from thinking you want to be a doctor for like 10 years as an elementary kid because you watched Cliff Huxtable on you know,
Right.
right? I'm
Yeah.
like, man, Bill Cosby's looks like Cliff Huxtable, forget Bill.
Yeah. I know. I was
Bill
like,
had his own problems, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he looked like he had a good job. He was
Yeah.
listening to jazz and going in when he wanted to and making money. So I was like, yeah, this doctor sounds good, but I
Yeah.
didn't really have what it took to sustain in that thing. But business excited me. So that's how I shifted over to that long story. You know.
Yeah. So, did you finish school at Cal State Fullerton?
I did. I finished with a finance degree over there.
Finance
Yeah.
degree. Wow.
Mhm.
And so then did you think, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go into corporate.
I
What
did.
is your stuff?
I did. So I was always interested like in stocks,
Mhm.
and investments, as well as small business since I was young. Like I was always trying to find some way to make money without working.
Yeah.
I was, I don't know. I watched some TV show and I'm like, dividends. I need dividends. Like that sounds pretty cool. Dividends, right?
Yeah.
So, credit to our high school librarian. She found me this old book on stocks, and I read about stocks and options. And I used
Wow.
to follow, every morning, get the San Jose Mercury News and look at like I would watch Nike, and stuff like that, and because
Yeah.
but so I still always had that kind of investments side in me, and so I wanted to take finance because I thought, man, this would be really cool. But what I didn't really understand was like while I loved all these things and I, eventually became an investor, unsuccessfully, by the way. But uh for me, my take on it was as I got into the industry, this is a sales job.
Yeah.
Like that's what this is,
Yeah.
you know. And I didn't really like that. I
Yeah.
like doing it for myself.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have this pressure to like kind of, if I don't sell this, then I don't make no commission. But like, I don't know if this is the best thing.
Mm.
But the thing is, like, obviously, you stay in the industry, then you can figure out those things out and whatnot. But it excited me for myself. It didn't excite me to do it for other people and things
Mm.
like that. So I ended up with this finance degree, and I ended up out of college working for this subsidiary of Ford Motor Company, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But I was a contract worker. I wasn't an
Mm.
actual Ford worker, you know. So
Yeah.
they had this business that they were trying to launch called Auto Concierge, right?
Mm.
But anyways, I don't want to go into the whole thing about it.
Yeah.
But so they hired me as like a business development kind of thing. Super excited. Literally, like the week I got there, guys, we're changing all this stuff. You don't have to like business plan this thing out. We're gonna send you to sales school, and you're
Oh.
gonna do this. So I was like, so
Oh.
they're paying for me to go to this crazy sales program, which was super interesting. But
Mm.
you know, a lot of cold calling, a lot
Oof.
of grabbing like lists and like things, and you know, we had access to these corporate lists from Ford through their clients. So I'd go in there and try to tell them I worked for Ford and we got a new program for you. And like, I mean, it was rough, and barely anybody sold nothing, right?
Oh
But
man.
but you're looking at this thing, and again, this is just my experience. I can't say for everybody's experience, but the minute I saw them changing, I was like, "Yo, this thing's gonna fail," you know, and they're blowing a lot of money on this thing. But they gave me a car, they gave me at that time, they gave me a phone, they gave me, whatever, all the stuff. They didn't pay me so much, but like you're on the scale where like you just get raises every quarter. So I'm like, I can hang with this thing or something like that, right? And what I did learn, right, is the guys who actually worked for Ford, like these guys were untouchable.
Oh wow.
Like they were just gonna. I don't know how it is now. You know, obviously the economy is different,
Yeah.
but you're just gonna go to the next project, and they knew that. Like if this doesn't work, I just do my thing. I hope I go to NASCAR sometime. Like, and they would just like
Oh
shuffle
wow.
you around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but we since we were through a contract company, we didn't have that same thing. But I learned a lot doing that, and again, I probably was a professional Madden player at that time. Madden, I'm playing Madden. Okay, I'll make some phone calls.
Oh my gosh. That's
I mean,
funny.
you're like 22, 23 years old,
Yeah.
so you're, but yeah, I learned a lot over there. Made connections over there, and I got that also through another connection,
Yeah. How long did you
and
stay
so,
there?
man, probably a year and a half, because
Yeah.
then, like, within probably like 4 months, they kept switching up the business, you
Oh
know,
man.
and then after 4 months after I left, they shut down, and yeah, but yeah, man, I tell you, man, these guys. Okay, man, again, just an opinion, man. Some of these corporate guys, man, boy,
Disclaimer. Disclaimer.
they know how to blow money, man. They know
Yeah.
how to blow money like nobody's business. And they shuffle everything through their own subsidiaries.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So you're like, okay, you're gonna get your car, but then you go get it from Hertz, and you go get, because they're just you're buying from each other, and like
Yeah.
it's funny, man. But
Yeah.
anyways, so that was my first job out of college, was
Yeah.
that Ford project. Um, and then after that, uh, I ended up working with my sister
Yeah.
at the law office.
Yeah.
So
How'd you like that?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. I really liked working with my sister. We as much as we butted heads when we were little,
Karate
like,
man.
yeah, karate man, karate man bruised on the inside. But like, she we worked really well together. We had the same values. We had the same ways that we wanted to help people, and she hated doing like all the bills and all those kinds of
Oh yeah.
things, and then my dad, he really did like hand us kind of like a book of business, you
Hmm.
know, and so um it was good. Ultimately, my sister, she started, she had two kids. She really wanted to focus on being a mom,
Yeah.
and just continuing with her clients that she had and even trimming some of those things down as her shift happened.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't the future wasn't going to be me trying to build more,
Yeah.
or go into different areas. We would meet with because our thing was estate planning. My dad was really good at that,
Oh,
and he was
okay.
able to set up these really good systems for us. And then I used to set up a lot of what I did was besides managing the business was setting up corporations and limited liability companies for people who want to get business started and things like that,
Yeah.
and then eventually closing it for them if they didn't want to continue it. Everybody's
Right.
got a dream, got to have a dream.
Right.
But so that was it was a good time. I learned a lot doing that. Learned a
Yeah.
lot about people, about just the process of regulation, dealing with the state,
Oh, yeah.
having to go through things with people when, family members would pass away, and just making sure, like, so it was a really, and I loved working with my sister. It
Yeah.
just, you know our and thank God, because I wouldn't be where I am today either. But like, just your goals change sometimes.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
it,
I mean,
um,
as you're like growing and maturing, I feel like, of course, if you have a family, your goals are going to be different than when you don't have a family. I mean,
absolutely.
I got married young. I was 22 when I first got married. First marriage, yeah. And I was young in my Air Force career and like everything changed in an instant. And I remember telling young airmen as they're coming in, they're like looking for their first car. I said, "Listen, what you got to do is you have to keep in mind for the future." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I know you're looking at this single cab truck or this like sports car or whatever, because you're young, right? Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want, I want the Camaro." I'm like, "Bro, the insurance on that's going to be crazy." But other
Sounds.
than
I need
that,
sounds.
yeah, I'm like, other than that, everybody that I came here with, I was at my first base. I said, everybody that I came here with, we're all in the same age range between when we got there, between like 20 and 23. And we all lived in the barracks together. And then within like a year and a half of us getting there, we were all married and or with children.
Wow.
Okay, so then it was like, hey, you guys are young. You're thinking about like, oh, I want a fast car. I want a cool truck, this and that. I said, think about putting a baby seat back there. They're like, and they're like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, it might not be.
Yeah.
Just think about
Just
that. Think
wait.
about how upside down you're going to be if you buy this car that's like
Right.
your payments are like 90% of your paycheck, and a lot of these places they have these like used car lots right outside the
Hmm.
base, and they're
Hmm.
targeting these young
Oh yeah,
soldiers
yeah.
or
They
airmen
know.
and stuff
They
like
know.
that. They know. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so I knew a guy who had a brand new, let's see, this was 95, 96. I knew a guy who had a brand new Ford Probe, but he never drove anywhere because
Pro.
he couldn't afford the
Okay.
gas. Yeah, a Probe.
Gas.
And
Oh my
then a
gosh.
guy had somebody went and bought an Eagle Talon. This is a Filipino
Mm.
guy from he was somewhere from LA. I remember taking him when I was stationed at Vandenberg, and we took him, we wanted to go visit family, and we took him to go be with his family. But he bought like an Eagle Talon, and I'm like, with a turbo, and I was like, oh,
Oh wow.
his insurance was like outrageous. But yeah, yeah, definitely. Like when
Yeah.
you're young, you don't think about all those things,
Yeah.
but as you grow and mature, definitely your goals change. So, how long did you end up staying there?
Shoot. I want to say a couple years. It was,
Yeah.
it was a couple years, and then I had other side things going on too. I did like um a kind of importing some like food goods from the Philippines, and then having them sold over here.
And what?
Uh, it was a vegetarian food, vegetarian
Oh,
like veggie top. Yeah,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
honestly, like, man, this is a good. I mean, I don't know if there's young people watching this, but like that was my best one
Yeah.
because I mean, there it, it just wasn't like sexy,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
what I learned. I was like, you don't need that sexy thing, but like I just didn't as my goals changed. I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like I started getting tired of like dealing with freight forwarders and this and that, and that was just we had this one issue one time with the people on the Philippine side, and the
Yeah.
people I was working with too was a family business, right? So, but their own guys in their own company, like I started noticing different, like I'm like, the price is changing. Is the price changed? This and that, and like, hey, that fee wasn't there before, right?
Hmm.
So, I made a couple calls,
Hmm.
try to go over the head of a few people, and they were like, "Yo, hey, sorry, John, this dude over here, manager, he been skimming, right?" And I
I
mean,
know that
for me, I
story.
was still okay, because I could mark my stuff up, but I was just like,
Yeah.
you're just like, hey, that wasn't there before, that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And and then now being over here in the Philippines, like you kind of see how things go, and I'm not. It is what it is, but a lot of times you get people who like they do a lot for your business,
Hmm.
but if you don't take care of them, right?
Yeah.
At some
Oh,
point, these people can really rationalize, like, yo, man, maybe they don't want to ask, or they've asked, and
yeah.
you're like shutting them down, and
Yep.
you have authority, and it's like you kind of rationalize, hey,
Yeah.
man, like I deserve this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you see that, and I'm not saying, one way, obviously that's wrong, but
Right.
you can see also in ways people treat people,
Yeah.
you have to consider that as well. How I treat people, what am I going to build in that? And then do I want people, like, do I want to put fear on people,
Mm.
or do I want to include people?
Yeah.
And then even then, you
Yeah.
can do your best, and you know, people are struggling.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a million kinds of things like that. But anyway, so I was, that had happened to me, and there was at this point. So I was just like, so when I go to shut this thing down, right? So we're a
Yeah.
corporation and everything. My buddy who was becoming a CPA, like I asked him, "Yo, can you shut me down, refile all these things, and blah blah blah," right? And he was like, "Yeah, I can do that. It's a good project for me to get my feet wet." And I remember, like, halfway into the work, he was like, "Hey, John, man, you want to shut this down?" He's like, "Yo, there's good money here, right?"
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, I don't want to keep. Yeah, it's fine, whatever. Now I'm like, man, well, if I still had that stream of income going in, I should have just hired someone.
Yeah.
But little things like that.
Yeah.
I have sometimes I forget about all these little experiences and little hustles that I had and things like
Yeah.
that, and that I was able to do. But um, that would lead me. That experience led me to other things along the way that would kind of drive my entrepreneurial spirit. As far as like, I did a lot of things that looked good.
Hmm.
Some didn't do good, but the things that I eventually did good over the long term were just things that I would do for free no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned about my business desires, is that, I have friends who, like, all the thing that excites them is numbers.
Mhm.
So they just need to see a bottom line and a profit, and they're like, "Yo, let's do this," and they can go and like scale, and they can just go after it. For me, I can help people start stuff, but for me to stick with it, I just have to love it.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me in it. And so I'm probably, unless I can find that great idea that I really love, I don't know that I'm going to be some huge financial thing. I mean, and basically, like, I will give stuff away just to
Yeah.
like include more people and like let people eat, and like that's what makes me happy.
Yeah.
So, but everybody's got to eat themselves too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that so I was doing after that. I was going through just personal things like in my life and good things, and it led me into like Christian ministry is
Mhm.
what ended up happening. So
Yeah.
as I was um closing the one business and then getting out of working with my sister, where she was wanting to close basically her business and just work
Yeah.
out of home and be a mom. Um, I was kind of like, okay, what am I going to do next? And I had always had a good experience like in volunteer work, like working with youth, I guess because I'm like immature, So like,
Same.
yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's
I
like,
get
oh
along with
yeah, I'm
these
like,
young
yeah, do
people.
that. And the real
You know,
adults are like, why are you telling him to do that?
yeah,
That's probably not safe. And I was like, I don't know.
let's film that. That's awesome. Who's got a camcorder? Camcorders.
Camcorder.
So, but I had success in that, and so I was like, maybe maybe I'll work with youth in the community. Maybe I would see like single moms, you know, try to make it,
Yeah.
you know, and a lot, and I would think, oh, maybe there's community programs that I could help and work for that would like I had this idea like kind of like just serving in the community
Yeah.
that would and I applied for different gigs that I thought fit right up my alley, and like I was just kind of getting shut down like left and
Hmm.
right. um my dad had gone to this my parents and a few other people had gone to a conference in Northern California. um I don't remember exactly what the context of it, but it was a Christian conference, and my dad somehow picked up this brochure for a ministry school, and he came back and he was like, hey John, what do you think of this? And I was like, you know uh I got my own plans.
Hmm.
I'm gonna do this, this, and this. And my dad was like, hey man, those are good plans, and they'll always be there. But this is an opportunity to blah blah blah. And I was just like, why would I move away from here where I want to work and build
Yeah.
to go, spend it was a year program, like 10 months, right? Like a school year.
Hmm.
And I was like, this program doesn't really give you a degree, it's this and that, and whatever. So I kind of was just like, eh. But more doors kept kind of closing for me. And I I remember, my parents are always super supportive of me, right? And all these crazy things like I tried to do and stuff. But I think they were always like, when's it gonna click for this guy? When's he gonna turn a corner? So
That sounds familiar.
I yeah, yeah. And God bless him, So like I'm probably about like, I don't know. I'm I got little things I'm working here and there, but I remember my parents were like, hey, let's have lunch, and I said, all right, yeah, let's go to lunch, You buying? I'm coming, So
Right.
um, my dad was like, hey, my dad's not someone who can easily have these kinds of conversations. He has to work up to it, be like, he doesn't want to bother, he wants you to live your own life. So he doesn't want to
Yeah.
like, tell you what to do or whatever. So it's kind of uncomfortable for him to like approach these conversations. I could tell. And he was just like, hey, what'd you think about that school? And I was like, man, I looked at that thing one time and I never looked at it again. And so I said to him, I said, you still thinking about that? Like, why is this important to you? You know? And he goes, when I saw the list of the people who were like teaching at the school, I bought their books because they had books and I read them.
Mhm.
And he's like, if I didn't have any commitments, and I could take 10 months off, this is where I would go.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, I have a lot of respect for my dad. I feel like, you know, he's a always been a strong leader, and for me, that's like he's co-signing on this thing
Mm-hmm.
that he would do it. So
Yeah.
that was a different thing. And I remember I kind of heard this, to me it was God, but I heard this voice and it was kind of like, John, you say that you tell people your dad's your role model, but rarely do you ever do anything, follow his advice. uh, so I was like, huh, you know. Um, so I was like, okay. I didn't say I'll do it. I said I'll take a look at it again, you know.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had been going through like a different spiritual awakening, and the um I guess the words that I would use to describe everything was happening, the message that became a message for me was nothing to lose,
Yeah.
right? Like, you got yourself here, but what do you got to lose? Like, to do something different, in the spiritual perspective. Hey, what do you got to lose to do it my way? Hey, you don't like it? You can go back to what you were doing. Nothing will stop you. Go back to what you're doing.
Right.
So I used to try to like, put in my mind and paste it everywhere, and nothing to lose. There were Bible verses that went along with that I would fill my mind with, and it was just like, hey, okay, if you have nothing to lose, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
There's say I'm looking at this thing, and it's like, hey, you get they'll just keep 10%. If you don't like it within like 2 months, you could take off. And I was like, yeah, that's not bad. What do you got to lose? So
Right.
ended up, um, you know, make shorten this thing. Ended up going to this ministry school, and I just threw myself into it. It was
Yeah.
weird. Don't get me wrong, it was weird. It was nothing I grew up with. It's not, you know, and but I was just like, why would I move away to like kind of fold my arms and judge everything? Let me just give everything to this. If I don't like it at the end, just let it go.
Yeah.
And my life changed from that. And the funny thing was that I never went back to Southern California. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I stayed there, um, going to that school, moving to Northern California allowed me to take my first basketball coaching job, coaching freshmen with my best friend Mike in Palo Alto. I used to drive an hour and a half from where I live, 2, 3 times a week, just to coach this basketball team. And the following year, we got the JV job.
Mm-hmm.
The following year, when I was coaching and going through this ministry program, my buddy Mike was like, dude, you're awesome with these young guys. You need to get your own team. So I was like, he's like, why don't you go and he said, why don't you try substitute teaching as a side gig while you're in school? And I was
Yeah.
like, cool. So I started substitute teaching. And he's like, why don't you apply for the JV job over there? And so I applied for the JV basketball job over there. That's a funny story. I'm coming from this big like Division II school to this small Christian school. Like, man, we won the championship 2 years, but I'm writing all these things down, right? And like, yeah, nothing, you know. Now, I'm gonna make this story a little shorter, but turns out right before season starts, I get this call. I'm substitute teaching, and they're like, "Oh, kid, can I answer the phone?" Whatever, they answer the phone. Hey, uh, Coach Minner wants to talk to you. I'm like, "Who's Coach Minner?" I answer the phone, and it's like, "Oh, Coach Minner, I'm the boys varsity coach. Man, I saw your application. Yo, can I come by your class and talk to you?" I said, "Yeah, cool. These kids are just fooling around. Come through." Anyways, I'm like, hey, they saw me. They saw my great application. Bro, I was 7th on the list of like guys he was trying to get. Everybody was filling up. I was literally the last guy, right? And he's like, you want the job? And I was like, Coach, I got to go to Philippines next week. Be there for 2 weeks. He's like, listen, You tell me you want the job right now. I'll just put both teams together, JV and varsity, for the first 2 weeks. You come back and you just start them." And I was like, "I'll take it," you
Ah,
know.
yeah,
And so ultimately, like, going to the school, that ministry school, got me into coaching,
right.
which ultimately led into the youth work I do at the foundation here in the
Yeah,
Philippines. And going to that school was the first time that someone invited me to go to the Philippines since I was like 9 years old. There I am, like 29, 28, 29, and
yeah,
someone's invited me to come to the Philippines. So that whole thing, like making that decision and just being like, hey, what have I got to lose? Set kind of this ball rolling
yeah,
for what has really become like, man, a life that I couldn't expect. Like I never thought I would, you know, the next next thing in the timeline is my wife, getting married, and my wife and I,
yeah,
you know, doing a year of marriage in the US or 2 years, and then moving to the Philippines
yeah.
with our 1.5-year-old kid and living there full time for 12 years, and trying to get, now trying to get back here as soon as we can. So that I mean, I always tell the story here in the Philippines when I would share with people, like, never in a million years, as a kid growing up in Glendale, as a college student in Southern California, whatever, would I ever thought I would ever live in the Philippines,
Yeah,
or that find a heart for like the nation, the
yeah,
people,
yeah,
that my very best friends in life would be here in the Philippines. Like that would have never entered my mind,
yeah.
you
It's so
know.
crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. Like you think about like growing up and stuff, and what it was like, things that you thought about, like your dreams, your hopes, and your dreams back then,
Mhm.
and like what you believed was available to you based on like your environment. I
Right.
feel like growing up in the suburbs, everybody I knew, like when you graduated from high school, you went to college. That was the thing. You
Hmm.
went to college and you were expected to become a professional. Everybody was a professional. Everybody's parents were all professionals.
Hmm.
And so then it's like, oh, there's this pressure that I got to live up to this. I have my own standards and I got to live up to this. And then
Hmm.
I think really just following your own path, it
Yeah.
like it was so weird when I joined the military because everybody was left behind. And then I would go back and visit every now and then. Everybody was still there. And I'm like,
Right.
man, this is so crazy. Thinking like I was trying to, about my 10-year mark, close to my 10-year mark, I was trying to go through this program that would take me from active duty to reserves and then like be stationed at March and then like work a job and like go to
Yeah.
school, like live with my parents for a little
Yeah.
bit. And because my parents like brought it up to me, hey, you should think about that, coming out of divorce, young
Yeah.
divorcee. And so I was thinking about those things. And then I remember making a decision going, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do this. And then calling home and my dad saying, oh, nobody talked to you? I'm like, what do you mean nobody talked to me? And he said, we're moving to Tennessee. I'm like, what? And so that
Cancel
was
those
like,
plans.
oh, yeah, cancel those plans. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to reenlist and I'm going to 20. And, we'll see what happens from
Wow.
there. But yeah, it's
Boy.
it's so interesting. The my guest last week, he was calling in from Nigeria,
Mm.
Udeji Anibaba, and he said that when he was trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life, because he was doing something he wasn't really happy with, his pastor said, mindfulness brings opportunity. And I was like, ooh, that's interesting. And he's like, yeah, because like mindfulness means that like your eyes are open and you are aware and then you see the opportunity, because if you like never open your eyes to
Mm.
the different things that are available for
Possible.
you, that are
Yeah.
possible, yeah, then you'll never see the doors that you can open or that will open for you. It's interesting.
Well, I think that you're some people tell it to you, but sometimes we just pick up these things. Like that's for them, not for me,
Hmm.
you know? Um, like, I think my mom told me stuff like that where like, hey, you're good in school, just do this. Like business, that's for other people, not for us, you know? And
Yeah.
then I was like thinking to
Yeah.
myself, like, yeah, but you have what you have because your mom was in business and she was hustling and she was doing that and she was more successful than anyone that we know, whatever. And yeah, it came from, nothing,
Yeah.
and it's like, but just in one generation, like I guess my grandma, my Lola, didn't want them to hustle,
Right.
didn't want
Yeah.
them to have to flip stuff. So put them to school and those kind of things and whatnot. But when I would talk to my grandma, she was always my silent investor, in my failed stuff. You know, she would tell me, John, don't use up your capital. You need that. Like, hey, we're gonna make it on this next one, But anyway, but I would see the light in her eyes when she would talk about like
Yeah.
flipping stuff or the profits, and that's how she had um resources to always help whoever came through her door with
Hmm.
something. And but my mom just in one generation would say, well, that's not for us.
Yeah.
And it's like, huh, right? So sometimes that goes into your head and whatnot, but or you just pick it up. Like I've never seen anybody in my community doing something like that. They all do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
They all go to college. They
Right.
all get one of these jobs.
Yeah.
I have a buddy of mine, and I wanted to do a podcast with him. I was telling him, he became a graphic designer.
Hmm.
He teaches at UCLA, but he became super successful. He went to the industries that he wanted to work in from the beginning, which was music and film and all these things, and like super successful, right? Nobody in our community was a graphic designer.
Yeah.
His parents are in medical. His
Yeah.
sister's in medical, and it was so out of the ordinary to
Yeah.
try that. And
Yeah.
so until there's like, so sometimes we put it on ourselves, like, oh, that's not for us. That must not be for us or
Yeah.
me, because you just never saw anybody
Yeah.
who looked like you or came from your family or community or friend group who was doing something different.
Right.
You know.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. And like sometimes it's your community, like your environment. Sometimes it's your culture.
yeah,
Like Joe Coy talks about, Filipino nurses, right? Hey, one of my 11 or 13 majors that whatever that I did was pre-nursing. And it was like, I don't know why I ever thought I was going to do that. I couldn't handle like half the things that they have to go through every day.
sure.
But yeah, that's like the medical field. Filipinos in the medical field. That's like
Well,
obviously
but
it's a
see,
stereotype, but it comes from somewhere.
it's a stereotype, but it's because like, okay, that's outside of the Philippines,
Yeah.
right? I go outside the door, I'll find a bunch of Filipino graphic designers. I go outside
Yeah.
here, I'll find a bunch of Filipino lawyers, a bunch of Filipino like whatever businessmen, right? Because in Philippines they do everybody does everything. It's not in Philippines everyone isn't a nurse.
Right.
Shoot, you'd be lucky if you can find a hospital near your area. I'm dead
It's
serious,
true.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I work in places literally where some of the most beautiful places that barely got to work in hospital.
Yeah.
We're trying to change that, but so like obviously everybody's not nurses, but in context of like whether it's the diaspora, wherever that could be, obviously the history of immigration to whatever countries, what they're allowing
Yeah.
in for, whatever. There's a million reasons, right?
Yeah.
So but that, so for us growing up in Southern California or growing up in the US, that
Mhm.
is what we see,
Oh, yeah.
and it was rare. Like every now and then you might see someone like, hey, they got a restaurant,
Yeah.
or they went outside of, they had that stable job and they
Yeah.
went outside of that. But
Yeah.
also, like now I live in San Francisco and where I didn't grow up, which is another huge Filipino community, right?
Right.
But it's a different community than what I grew up with. They have different jobs, they have different things. They have different culture for what they want from school.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really like, I mean, I guess that's another thing that was a huge part of my journey is, and I think a part of yours as well is just not staying living in the same place forever.
Yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know,
I'm
I mean,
I got like some of that, Angela calls it, gypsy blood or whatever. I mean,
mm,
she was an army brat, so she went through 13 school by the time she graduated from high school, 13 schools in 12 years. You think about that. That's a lot,
mm,
right?
that's
Um
crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. And so we often talk about like, oh, we're gonna move. No, we're not gonna move. We're
Mhm.
next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pay off all our debt. We're gonna buy an RV. That
Mm.
way we can live in the RV wherever we go, but always have a place to come back to, you know.
Right, right, right.
So and it's really, I mean, cost of living in Mississippi, can't beat it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean I think that's one thing that um living outside of where I grew up and even in a different country, a different part of the world, um, has given me is like I see it like, hey, I want to spend a couple of years in some other country. Once my kids are doing their own thing and things like
Hmm.
that, like, you know, um, why can't I do what I'm doing here anywhere?
Right.
You know, so long as you connect to the right people, and maybe it's a different look because maybe you're older, maybe you're mentoring people instead of actually doing I can't do defensive slides on the court. I can barely do it now.
Hey,
My
so
own,
so give people an insight of like what it is that you do. What is it that your foundation does?
okay.
And like what is the focus of that?
So when our foundation is called the Nothing to Lose Foundation, and again, that was kind of came from um, that motto or whatever that I felt like when I was going through a transition, just how I saw my life in the world. How I wanted to live my life. I wanted to not be afraid of failure. I wanted to like always try to get better and not fear like trying to get better because I might fail. I wanted to live with passion. Like be excited about life. And choose those kind of things. And so when I got to ministry school and I started coaching basketball in high school, um, I I didn't get coached in high school really. I mean, we had we didn't have like I did, but we didn't have like full on in our school like really well developed like varsity programs.
Right.
I wasn't privileged enough to have something like that. So, but we played a lot, so we had a love for the game. But I guess I never realized till I was coaching how much effect you can have on a young person and how many opportunities you have to tell them that you believe in them
Hmm.
or like tell them it's okay when they fail or
Yeah.
like when they don't understand something or just the joy to see things click for them,
Yeah.
you know. And that's what coaching gave me. And so uh we had this idea that how can we do this for more people, right? Um, the AAU or club basketball scene was already happening at that time and getting more and more popular.
Hmm.
And I would see some of our players kind of get recruited by different teams, and some of these people would like pay for their braces. Someone would do, I mean, at that time, I was judging a lot of these things, and
Yeah.
which is not to say that like there is a lot of things that I don't like in it, and but there's a few things that I like, and I've been with my own children. They've been a part of some okay clubs,
Hmm.
but we knew we didn't want to do that
Yeah.
based on what we were seeing. hey, maybe if I did it, started then, maybe I would be rich from doing that. But, another missed opportunity, but we just knew we didn't want to do what we saw.
Yeah.
So my buddy Mike, who I started the foundation with and I was coaching with, he was my best friend since we were like, fifth grade. He was like, why don't we start a foundation? And I'm like, what's a foundation? He's like, I don't know. That sounds good. you know, you we could start just trying to teach these fundamentals. We'll maybe run little camps. And at that time, I was getting ready for my first trip to the Philippines, right? Since 9 years old.
Yeah.
And when I had come to the Philippines, man, I mean, this is how disconnected I was from the Philippines. Like, I didn't know how much they loved basketball.
Oh my gosh.
I
It's
mean,
like,
they will build a ring, call it a ring here, a hoop, out of anything.
oh yeah.
You find spare piece of rebar, even if it's like only this big, then you make a ring like this small. Then you'll find a little ball, and then kids will just play and just knock it on a tree. And I started taking pictures of all these things, all these hoops that I would see,
Yeah.
And when I got back, I was like, Mike, man, they love basketball over there. They love it, and why don't we try going over there? So we started doing like little fundraising camps a few times in Southern California. Then we would go to Philippines and to build towards going to Philippines. And one of the things that I was learning about was just the value of relationships, right? And so I was like, well, Mike, like, where are we going to go if we go there? Like, my whole family's here in the US.
Yeah.
Like, I literally know nobody over there. And I go, what about you? And he's like, well, I have family in this small island that I've never been to, Romblon. He's all, but I can call my parents to call somebody. We can go there, right? So, I have my second trip to the Philippines planned. And I'm like, okay, Mike, I'm going to go there. I'll go there a week early. You come meet me over there. And before I do my thing in Negros, where I live, where I would eventually live, you meet me, we'll go to Romblon. And before we do that, so like, it's like, all right, cool, right? Man, boy, you wouldn't know how to get to this place. We had to take a 13-hour boat ride.
Oh my gosh.
Bro, overnight.
Was it like the Roro? You on the
Yes,
ferry?
yes,
Oh my
yes.
gosh.
You can put the cars on them and all that, right?
Yeah.
But this ain't luxury, man. This ain't luxury.
No.
I would bet these are like 30-year-old ships or something like that. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know my
older than
maritime
that.
history.
Older than
But
that, I
like
promise.
they're making it work, right?
Yeah.
So now they got a 7-hour. They got a fast craft, right?
Oh, okay.
But then I just read the plane now, But they didn't have a plane at that time going to the small island, right?
Yeah.
So we get on. We first of all we get to Manila, right? And we just head to some sports store, Toby's. We buy like 8 basketballs.
Yeah.
We have no plan except to show up on this small island with basketballs and meet whoever Mikey's relatives are that he's never met before.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey.
So we somehow we get to the port, which is like several hours away from. I want to say that like I think I was close to the port, and Mikey had to come meet me at the port in Batangas. So we jump on this boat. We arrive in Romblon like 2-3 a.m. Right? 2-3 a.m. It's dark. We don't know who's picking us up. We don't know what they look like, but it's Philippines, so like we stick out, So anyway, they find us. Apparently, Mikey's dad has been building a house in their old, where the family's from, but he's never been there. And so we're like the first going to be to arrive there and see what it looks like. Let me tell you, that's another thing. It was not what he ordered.
Oh no!
not what
No,
he
I
ordered.
already know, man. I already know.
So,
That's so funny.
anyways, so we go there, 3 a.m. They've got pond de sal and corned beef for us. They're like,
Let's
eat this,
go. Yeah.
go to sleep, we'll wake you up in the morning, and we'll get you guys started, right? So,
Yeah.
wake up in the morning. They're like, where are we going? Well, we're going to the Department of Agriculture. That's where your uncle works. And I'm like, well, how are we gonna get to basketball from like Department of Agriculture, right? And it's all relationships. So we show up, Mikey get introduced to his uncle, and they're like, he's also, what do you guys want to do here? What are you doing here? We're like, we're basketball coaches. All we want to do is share our love and our knowledge of the game with anyone who wants to listen and anyone who wants to play. And he's like, okay, I have a fraternity brother who's the sports director at the college. Let me call him, right?
Okay.
Calls him up. He's like, hey, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know what he's saying. And they're like, okay, someone's going to bring you there. So bring us to this PE department. This fool's just chilling. These guys are easy day. Like they're not working. It's hot outside, chilling. They're like, what are you guys doing here? So we're like, all right, tell them again. This is what we do. We coach basketball, high school basketball. We're here, this, and that. And the guy's like, hey, I got basketball class today. I got 2 periods. You guys want to teach them? He's trying to get out of work.
Right.
So we're like, yeah, this is awesome. Okay. So we go and we teach 2 college PE classes, basketball, right? And the guy's watching us. They're watching what we're doing. And he's like, what are you guys doing tomorrow? And I'm like, no, we were here to, this afternoon we're playing in the barangay with little kids. Um, what do you have in mind? He's like, well, all the coaches and all these local schools here are all my former students. It's only one college.
Oh
So
yeah.
you go through that college. That's unless you go away to Manila, that's the college you go to. So this guy
Right.
literally knows every student because they all have
Everybody.
to do PE. So he's like,
Yep.
we got 7 schools here. I'm gonna call all these guys up and their coaches, and you can do clinics out here in the grandstand, and we'll just cycle all these schools in, and you can do that. We're like, cool, right? So we do that. Next day, 7 high schools running these clinics.
Oh man.
These kids are out there in pants, bro, in their uniforms. Defensive sides and all this stuff, right?
Oh, it
But they
brings
just
back a lot
love
of
it,
memories.
man. They want to play. They
Yeah.
got collared white shirts and
Yep.
button ups and black pants, and they're out there in the sun, right? So, they invite us to lunch. We have a break, invite us to lunch, and I say to we got pictures of all this stuff. We have documentation. I say to the sports director, I said, hey, um, if I come back here a year from now and do a 6th grade camp, or grade six, I'm sorry, yeah, grade 6, but like 5th grade, I think maybe it was 5th grade. 5th grade, they end at that time. They end elementary and start high school. That's your first year of 6th grade here, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, if I come back and we do a 6th grade camp, can you organize that? Would you be interested? And I figured out whenever you ask people stuff here, they'll say yes.
Yeah.
One, they have nothing else to do, right? Why not?
Right. Yeah.
Right. 2, they don't know if you're serious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if you show up.
Yeah.
Yes, we will do it. Then you show up and nothing is ready because they didn't know you were serious.
Oh
But
man, the
no,
cultural differences, right?
yeah. But yeah, we were good at it now, but before, anyways,
Yeah.
but what ended up happening is we said, well, if we want to make a splash, right, let's do high school because at least we'll have better games.
Yeah.
You have little kids, yes, because your idea is let's build them up,
Yeah.
because they're coachable at that age.
Mhm.
But then the games are bad, you can't shoot, you can't do all this, so like you're like, this will be more fun and to get
Yeah.
more eyes on this thing. So it turns out we go back there a year later, bring a team, bring some of our friends, and bring a photographer, and we put this camp together, and even one of my players who played for me on JV when I was the head coach in Vacaville, his parents sent him out here with me, dude by himself, 16 years old,
Oh my
to be a
gosh.
part of the camp and
Yeah.
just they're probably like, get rid of him for the summer, go to them, you know. But so we did this camp, and while we were doing it, I had a buddy from high school again, relationships. He funded the whole thing.
Yeah.
He's a doctor, and he was single at the time. But he's our CFO right now. He's on the board, but at that time we were just a bunch of friends, and I was like, "Bro, you're paying for this. You need to come.
Yeah.
Get a plane ticket. Come." He's like, "Dude, I didn't play basketball anymore." I'm like, "How are you going to do medical missions if you don't see what the need is over there?
Right.
Just come. Who cares if it's basketball?" So he comes with us. We have this team there. We're running 4 days of camp, right? We get them uniforms, dude. I bought a bunch of shoes on East Bay, Reebok pumps. They were on
Oh
sale.
yeah.
So we had boxes of Reeboks. We just um, get the just normal sizes, like 8 through 10 and 11. Get a few of those, right? So we come with like 50 pairs of shoes, right?
Yeah.
Brand new, right? Come there, give them uniforms, practice uniforms, whatever. We do it up. Our idea is like, these guys are passionate about basketball. Kids over here in the US, they get to have these cool camps. Why not these guys? Let's make our own,
Yeah.
so do that, right? Anyways, the idea was that make it an all-star camp. Okay.
Hmm.
So we take these 7 schools, send us your 5 best players. Okay. Introduce you to Philippines again. Can't do that, because here's what's going to happen. They're going to send you 3 of their best players, and then they're going to send you their nephew. They're going to send you. They're going to put you their son, right? And then the son's going to be like, "No, I don't like basketball." They're like, "There's free shoes." Man, it's supposed to be an all-star camp. We had kids who don't want to go in the game. Like, "You're in." No. So
That's so
you
funny.
got to learn. The next year, I moved there already. I scouted every kid, man. I'm like, "Man, nobody's sneaking in on here under my block." So, but anyways, my buddy, John, the doctor, who he starts just talking to kids while we're playing, right?
Yeah.
We go home. So here's our run of the day. We get up early, run the camp, lunch, run the afternoon camp. Then we head to the beach, swim, debrief, right? And we're there swimming, hanging out, sunset, and my buddy John's like, "Hey man, I was talking to these kids. And a lot of these guys are gonna have a lot of trouble going to college, if they don't have help." He's like, "Some of them have like 8 brothers and sisters, some
Right.
of them blah blah blah, this and that." He's like, "Even at this school here that's not expensive, like you're talking about like less than $100 a semester, right?"
Hmm.
He's like, "These guys will have a hard time going to school." He's
Wow.
all, "You think we should do some scholarships?" This had never entered our mind.
Mm.
We were just like, share your love for the game,
Yeah.
inspire people, make relationships, see what happens, right? So I'm like, "John, why don't you interview people?" He was like, "All right." Gets a little doctor notebook out. Guy interviews everybody in camp, right?
Hmm.
And so, you know, he start making a list. We go through guys as coaches, like, "Man, that dude's a hard worker. That dude
Yeah.
busts his ass, man. He's grinding, man. That dude's good already, but you can tell he's always listening. Like, how can I improve?" So you start like assessing these guys, right,
Hmm.
on their leadership, on their communication, on how they're working with teammates, whatever it is, and just all the stuff that you want in a great player and a great leader on the court. And so we
Hmm.
started just doing that, and so at the end of that thing, we decided that we would give out scholarships, and we ended up picking like 11 kids, and we went back to the US. We sent these guys, to the sports director to inform these guys that, hey, they'll be back here in November, and we want you to come to a meeting, blah blah blah, or whatever it is, right? And
Hmm.
so we ended up doing that and telling people they got awarded a scholarship, and we didn't know how to run a scholarship program,
Oh yeah.
but we started that. We found sponsors in the U.S., and what was working out is at that time I moved to the Philippines.
Hmm.
So now I was living there and I could go back and forth to Romblon. A year, less than a year after I had moved there, my buddy Mikey, he decides to take a sabbatical, unpaid, from his work.
Hmm.
He's like kicking ass in the district, he's a PE teacher. And he has no guarantee that his same job will be available to him.
Yeah.
He just has a guarantee they'll have a job in the district, right?
Yeah.
And so he takes off a year unpaid, goes and lives in Romblon.
Oh,
And we end up building this thing. We end up building, he starts feeding programs in more
nice.
rural mountain areas of
Yeah.
the island. He ends up, we end up bringing a medical mission and a vitamin program to, like, let's check on how this feeding program's going.
Yeah.
That brings in the medical side, which brings in more sponsors, which brings in more ideas, and then it grows into a bunch of different things.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, now um, we are, and we started in 2006 with the camps.
Hmm.
We're in Philippines 2007, first All Star Camp 2008. We just finished our last camp in June, this last month. We have basketball camp, volleyball camp. It is an all-star camp. All the kids are scouted. It's the top 32 kids in
Hmm.
Romblon province. I have 60 kids who have graduated with college degrees through this program. I have we have 3 girls playing varsity college volleyball right now, another 3 who previously graduated. Um, we now have local homegrown coaches.
Mm.
Our sports director is a kid who came to us as the scared kid in camp at 14 years old, who his mom brought, and I was so mad. I was like, man, I always bring in extra dudes. So this is what they do here too.
Yeah.
Dude, just show up. You weren't
Yeah.
invited, show up because you never know.
Yeah. That's right. Opportunity. You never
Yeah.
know.
So mom brings her kid, scared guy, ends up being one of our better guys, ends up being our sports director, ends up being one guy that is taking us into the future, right?
That's awesome.
Other
So,
side of that, oh, just real quick. So, like, that's just the Romblon side. I didn't go into what we did in Bacolod. We have a jujitsu gym that we have national team players coming out. I started 10 years ago with kids. One of our guys on the national team, uh, we started coaching him at 8 years old.
oh wow.
Dude's he's a beast. You
I
know what I mean?
bet.
But like this kind of thing where, like, I didn't know, we got into jujitsu over here because I wanted to learn jujitsu, but I didn't know how to coach jujitsu. All
Yeah.
I knew is how to run a practice. All I knew
Yeah.
is how to make games for kids.
Hmm.
But then as they grew, we grew, and so now we have this whole thing. And you talked about the coffee. Like, we have a coffee shop in the gym called Fundacion that is trying to highlight Philippine coffee, share it with the world. I mean, we're still in infancy, but a
Hmm.
lot of good relationships are being built with local people who are representing local farmers. And so kind of just everything, like, you know, that I would be in for free. Well, I am in it for free. but that I would do no matter what, whether there was an organization or not. We're doing those things through the platform of the
Yeah.
Nothing to Lose Foundation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome, man. It's it's so good to hear because I mean I've heard like parts of these stories before, obviously, when we visited in October, and then when
Yeah,
y'all came out for the funeral. But it's awesome to hear like more of it, like more detail about it,
yeah,
because like at the end of the day, it's like you wanted to do something like to help kids and you didn't know, but
yeah,
as you like stepped through the doors, as you walked in the steps that God laid out for you before you were born,
yeah,
he opened the doors and led you to the places that you're supposed to be. And countless people are able to come up out of poverty and to learn like new things and help each other out, which
yeah,
is
absolutely.
so I mean it's like it goes along right with fundamental beliefs that our parents have. Like my
Yeah,
mom always said, you know um it's so difficult in developing countries like the Philippines because so many people are born into poverty, and it's like a cycle, and it's a cycle, and it's a cycle. But once one person in the family is able to go to college, then that starts a whole chain of events for the entire family. And they're able to, pull
yeah,
themselves out of poverty, because then they have a different path. They see, then it's the mindfulness, right? Then they see that there's a path to a better life in a different way. And I know there are a lot of issues still, but it's so awesome to hear about your work over there. I got this question though. So you started in 2006, so the 20-year anniversary is next year.
yeah.
You gotta you are you like planning something big? What's going on?
So we've talked about so our while 206 2006 was when we started. And 2017 was when we started in the where we came to the Philippines. And
Mhm.
2008 was the first camp, right?
Yeah.
We were trying to build towards 2028.
Oh, 2028. Okay.
Yeah, we want to try to do like a homecoming,
Okay.
you know.
That's
So like
awesome.
one, all scholars, but then anyone who's ever been a part of the camp. So man, this is honestly like I mean I could tell these stories obviously for hours, but
Yeah.
I have guys that'll man, I seen a kid on a boat one time with my parents, and he's like, "Coach," and I'm like, "What's up?" In the early days, I can remember everyone's name. Now I
Yeah.
can't remember nobody's. I'm like, "James Perez, what's up, man?" And dude comes up to me. He's not a seaman or anything, but he's just working on the boat,
Yeah.
whatever, like doing errands, right? And this we start talking. I got broken Tagalog. He's talking to me. So this is what you're doing now. You didn't end up in school. And this kid was a great player, great
Yeah.
shooter. He never could get quite over because we have like an MVP all tournament team, and he could never get it. He almost was never getting over the hump, right?
Yeah.
To make it there or to win the championship, right? But he was there for I think he was with us for like 3 years, right? And anyway, so I remembered him, and I was just like, he shows me each his arm, right? And this guy, so we call nothing to lose. Just they love abbreviations here, so we call it N2L. It sounds weird because it's not nothing number two to lose, but whatever. It is what it is, right? But he's got this N2L scratched in on his arm, right?
Oh my gosh.
And bro, this is like 5 years later. I'm like, man, this
Yeah.
dude's like for real, right? So I tell him, I said, hey, listen, our director's name's Epsky over there, and I was like, hey, you ever back home, go to Eps. If you want to go back to school, I'm gonna help you, right? So, every now and then I'll ask Epps, like, yo, what's up with James Perez? He's like, bro, man. Sometimes he's sleeping in the plaza. Sometimes he comes by, I give him food, blah, 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 like
Mhm.
this. And I just said, he's like, but sometimes I can't talk to him when he's in the plaza because he's like faded. Like I don't want to talk to him when he's faded. So I just say, hey,
Right.
come
Yeah.
to the house if you need something, right? So, it's like a couple of years, right? So last year, right, you know, we're doing camp, right? And referees come because we hired local refs, right?
Yeah.
And this dude comes up and he's like, Coach, you remember me? And I'm like, James, what's going on? Dude's clean cut,
Wow.
everything. And he's like, man, coach, I changed my life. I'm a family man now, this, and that. And our method is always as soon as because guys, when we're running camps, guys and girls, they all just show up. Like,
Yeah.
if they can come by, sometimes they bring snacks, they're working now, or they just come to say hi.
Mhm.
Everyone knows if you show up, you're going to have to talk, right? So
Mhm.
it's like, hey, time out, everything stop. Yo, sit these guys down. James, tell them your story. And, usually our director Epsi was laughing because like usually it's always like, it's great, listen to your coaches, da da da, blah blah
Yeah.
blah,
Yeah.
right? And this dude straight up told the story about how he went downhill and all these things, and he didn't understand that like this is what they was trying to teach me and all these things, right?
Wow.
And like it was great. And the funny thing, he was, coach, man, I'm shy to ask, right? I need a whistle. Like I'm borrowing this whistle from my friends. He's a ref now, right? That's one of his
Mhm.
side gigs, right? So Mikey's like, here, have my whistle. And he gives him this crazy look. And Mike's like, that's a classic. And I'm laughing. I'm like, bro, he don't want your whistle. They're like, and then someone else is like, coach, that's a special whistle. That's like a FEMA whistle. Like it's like $20. Like when you blow it, dude, they can hear you on the other side of the court. They don't want just that regular whistle we bought for $3 at Big Five, right? And he's like, no, I got a whistle for you, right? And so I'm like, hey, if there's a whistle in town, I'll buy it for you. If you need to go online, we'll buy it for you, so you don't have to borrow your friend's whistle or whatever. But this kind of thing, like, it happens, like you
Yeah.
don't know when they're going to get it,
Yeah.
but you're just like, hey, we're here, you know, and there's so many stories that we have of scholars, and again, not everybody has made it through our program.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times we're trying to change this, but a lot of times we'll have like, not a lot, but there's been several occasions when we've had like uh, female scholars um, have like unplanned pregnancies,
Mhm.
and they would not want to show up
Mm.
because they would be embarrassed or something like
Yeah.
that and not tell us.
Yeah.
But then one of the times, just recently, we had a girl who had to stop college for a couple semesters, and we thought, not oh no, she got pregnant. We're like, dude, it's a blessing, right? But oh no, like, is she gonna draw away? But she didn't. She always
Mhm.
stayed in contact. Just graduated again. It's
Mm.
the
Nice.
mom, graduate. She's getting ready to start her work. I think with police. And it's just like it's changing. Because we're
Mhm.
always communicating. Listen, it's nothing to lose. You
Yeah.
don't like. It's not. It's going to be difficult because you didn't plan this, and parenting's difficult in general.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also a blessing. This is something you're gonna get to raise this child. And being
Yeah.
being a dad is one of my favorite things in the whole world.
Yeah.
So we try to approach it like that, and there's so many stories, and really like it's to see some of these young people, like some of them are just like you already knew when you saw them that they were gonna make it.
Yeah.
They didn't know.
Hmm.
But you looked at him like, dude, there's no way. This guy's a can't miss kind of person. He grinds. And I would tell them that a lot of times the way people run like these kind of programs here is they try. I mean, it's a judgment. I just disclaimer. This is my
Yeah.
judgment. They 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 make you think. They make the beneficiaries think that they owe you. Like, hey, we're
Oh.
helping you, man. You owe us. Or it's normal for scholarships here to like have a stipulation that you got to give back something, da da da
Mhm.
da da, right? And
Yeah.
ours isn't like that. But I tell these guys, like, we didn't choose you because you need us. We chose you because we saw in you what we need. That
Mm.
us in relationship, you being a part of this will make us all better,
Oh, that's
right?
awesome.
You can
Yeah.
make it without us, but we want to be with you. And this investment in relationship is for life.
Yeah.
It's not for, you know, um, just for college.
Yeah.
And then it's up to those young people, whatever they want to buy in to, we're there for them for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I hang out with these guys. I meet up with the alumni all the time in Manila. We go hang, even just a few of us. They tell me, I was godfather at one of our guys' wedding just a few
Yeah.
months back. He gave me a seat of honor at the table with his parents, and
Wow.
I was blown away, man. I had
Wow.
tears in my eyes. Like, I'm like, last story on this. So I was sitting next to another guest, and the father of our scholar, the father of the group, was introducing me to this guest, and he's like, "Hey, this is Coach John. He's my son's mentor, and this and that, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, And I'm thinking this is one of those guys, a can't miss guy. And like, this fool's gonna make it no matter what. He's awesome. And the guy, the guest, talks to me, goes, "This is a really good program." He's like, "But I have one question." He goes, "These guys are well off." He's like, or well to do. I forgot what he said. He's like, "Why did you offer them a scholarship?" And I was like, "Oh no, we don't choose on need.
Hmm.
We choose on leadership because they're gonna build this. They're the future. They're gonna make us better." And he was like, "Wow, I never heard of nothing like that." You know, and it's been true. These are the guys who are like, "Coach, we should do this. Coach, I want to start a program where all the kids coming out of college in Manila, at least they know where to come to. We'll meet with them once a month, help them manage their way through their employee journey.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it's hard to be
Yeah.
away from home in your first job and stuff like that."
Oh, yeah.
And so but we didn't create that. We just gave them more opportunities to lead,
Yeah.
you know. And on the other side of we see in that. So with jujitsu side and Muay Thai, these kids come to us at 10 years old. So by the time they're ready for college, like, we've known them for a long time.
Wow.
And we've seen them, man. Like, and so there's a bunch of different programs, but like, that's it, man. It's just like, how can you be there for these guys, share your passion with them, build relationship with them, and just be available for the success or hardship,
Yeah.
and go through it with them, and
Yeah.
it's a
That's
blast, man.
awesome,
It's a
man.
blast.
That's awesome. Yeah. Building a community through relationships is pretty awesome. Man, you know what? You I talked about in the beginning before you got on. I said one of the things I love to do is like to connect people, to share experiences via storytelling. And I think that one gene has passed down to both of us apparently for like storytelling, because you broke the record as far as like
Oh,
how
no,
long a show has gone.
time.
Normally, like we're like an hour over of usually where I'm like, okay, all right, cool. Thanks for coming on. But I wanted to hear your stories, and I wanted everybody else to hear your stories too. So I just want to thank you for coming on here an hour earlier than I actually told you were supposed to be on here. And waking up and sharing your stories with us and sharing about building your community, and like building relationships. It's so awesome. I tell people all the time, business is all about relationships, but like, what else can you build with relationships? You can build community,
Absolutely.
community.
Absolutely.
So, um, yeah. So yeah, I wanted to thank you. Much love to you, man.
Thank you,
We
man.
we have a shared history. Um,
Yeah.
I still think like you used to scratch me and bite me and all that stuff. And I still think about that. No, I'm joking.
And many others.
Yeah. But to the audience, hey, I thanks whoever that one person is that I see that's like been hanging on. I bet it's your mom and dad. But
Yeah.
anybody who's watched this, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for just hearing the stories. And if you have a story that you want to tell about your career journey, hey, let's have a conversation. Next week we have another special guest. My oldest friend in the world, Val Torres, is going to be the
Oh,
guest.
nice.
Yeah. The- yeah, I mean, first person, like first friend that I had when we moved to Riverside when I was like 2. So
Yes.
I've known Val like almost my entire life,
Good
which is
man.
pretty
Talented
crazy.
man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Before we go, I wanted to ask you, you got all these things for these athletes. What about
Mm.
the artists, man? What about
Okay.
the
So,
artists?
so really cool. Like obviously that's not my forte per se, But
Where's your
so
saxophone?
well, the idea is that the foundation is just a platform for people to share
Yeah.
their passions. So like what we do here in Bacolod is that we have regular meetings with the young people, like either after training or on the weekend, and we try to introduce like different people to them. It could be practical stuff like CPR and first aid or something like that. But we have artists come in. We work with the artist community here, so sometimes it'll be peers. People their age who are like
Yeah.
sharing stuff. Sometimes there'll be actual like trainers or teachers and things like that. Sometimes it could be music. Sometimes it just depends on like who's down to share. You
Yeah.
know, so a lot of times it will be people like who come to our gym as customers, as clients, and then like maybe they train jujitsu or Muay Thai or yoga, and they're like, "What is this? What do you guys do here besides all this?" And then we're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is how you can get involved." So in the past in the U.S. we did stuff like a creative lab. I
Yeah.
would love to start that back up over here. So we
Oh
did
man.
like filmmaking, we did graphic design, we did turntablism, DJing.
Oh, what?
What was the other one we did? Oh, we did like fight choreography, right?
Oh, wow, that's
So
interesting.
so it was pretty cool. So we try to do something where maybe if you can, you can like meld it all together. So like the filming guys film these like choreography guys and then document like the different things. So this is something that we really have in our hearts, but obviously like you need volunteers.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
need people to spearhead these things
Hmm.
and then take ownership of it,
Yeah.
you know? So, man, we're open to do something that is a program, not just these one-offs that we've
Yeah.
been doing. Maybe it takes an artist, maybe like someone in who I'm talking to right now, to come over,
Yeah.
and, excuse me, and identify people
Yeah.
who would be willing locally to keep pursuing some of these things. And so that's kind of where we're at. I will be in Palawan next week, and I'm doing a surf jujitsu kind of exchange.
Oh,
So
sweet.
there's a guy that we met out there in Palawan, who in San Vicente, who he lives in a fishing village where there's surf, and that's the surf spot, at least over there.
Oh, wow.
And so what he does is, as a surf instructor, he teaches the local youth how to surf and how to teach surfing so that they can also hustle when like
Oh,
there's
man.
tourists there during surf season, and he just has a bunch of boards that he lets them use to run lessons and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
they're interested in jujitsu. So we doing a whole like, hey, we'll come there and surf, we'll teach you jujitsu, and everybody, So who knows, in the future, but things like that,
Yeah.
that are available in like right now we're in uh 3 different communities. We're in Romblon, we're in Bacolod, and we're actually 4. Antipolo, where you went
Yeah.
before, and also San Vicente, Palawan. So and we just run whatever program we have with our point people over there. Like they're the ones who are in the community and know what the youth and young people are looking like need, and then we just kind of, you want this, we can give this to you. You want to start something new, we can help you go through the organization process, help you raise money for those kind of programs. So yeah, so the artist thing, I think music is a thing that they're really going to be going after in like
Yeah.
Antipolo, you know, because
Yeah.
they have a, they have a setup, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Man, that's
come
cool. Yeah.
through.
Yeah. Hey, you know, eventually it's gonna happen. I want to bring Angela over there. You know, she's never been there. She's never had the privilege of drinking a Coke out of a plastic bag before.
Plastic
So
bag. Plastic bag.
there's nothing like it, man. Nothing like it. But oh man, we gotta sign off, man. Hour and
Oh, sign
45
off.
minutes.
All right.
Hour
Sorry,
and
sorry,
45
sorry.
minutes. So don't hang up. I mean, stay in the
Okay.
studio, but you know, we're gonna sign off. Everybody, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hanging out, listening to all the stories. But yeah, next week, see me here again, 6 p.m. Central Time. Val Torres, he's my guest. All right, peace.